Every home has a secret room that someone's proud of or hidden. Let me show you the secret cavern.
Can you feature that awful creature? Can you feature that ugly creature? Creature features and feature features about creatures. Creature features.
So first rule, of course, don't touch my stuff. It's a lot to take in, I know. This is my working desk here. Played a little Warcraft over the years. A lot of little knickknacks up here, little figures. Probably one of my pride and joy is this Slurpee glass of Amazing Spider-Man. Of course, let me get Chewbacca out of it, one of the original Star Wars, hiding out in there. When I was a child, 77, I had a Slurpee in this glass, and I've kept it ever since. Most of the things here in the Secret Cavern, it's a lifetime collection that I've had since a child, and I just got, so it's a lot of the little things. If you look over here in this cupboard here, since I majored in screenwriting, here's a lot of screenwriting books and writing books, horror books, writing different stories, just like a reference library. A lot of trash on there too. This here is kind of my role-playing game closet. You're gonna say, what a trash, how messy. I'll tell you, see that Crown Royal bag? I don't drink, but I just loved it as a dice bag, so I bought some Crown Royal, gave it to one of my employees, and now that's what I have all my dice in. So these are different dice. These are like metallic dice. Not used, of course. This has another Crown Royal bag with all the other dice in it. I don't know if you want to just dump it out. Well, yeah, I'm going to dump it out, but that's like the dice that we were playing, so there's all kinds. Kind of cool. But nice role-playing stuff there all the way. Let's go through some of my shelves. People, when they come, they don't realize that I'm a big reader. My parents turned off the TV when I was in 4th grade. That was in 1974. And no TV, even though we only had 3 channels back then. So I read books a lot. So I'm a pretty fast reader. So sometimes I just shove things in there and I forget what I put up there. Let's just show you an example. So these are some 1980s Dungeons and Dragons books. So those are kind of cool. Keeper mod, player sheets. This is kind of like one of the things that comes in one of the box sets. So it's a little basic Dungeons and Dragons. So that's kind of cool. These here. So this is going for about $7,500. Steve Jackson's Melee. Whoop. Came out in the 70s. Kind of just a little combat system. I picked it up for $5 at one of the game stores. I can believe it just fell on the floor. Gears of War. So again, Best Buy had these. I used to work at Best Buy and they had extras of these, so I just took a couple. So these are like big lithographs. See if we can, oh, I don't want to open one up. They're all sealed. I had a few. Let's see. And look at that. One of my albums, James Bond, Live and Let Die. It's cool because it kind of opened up and you kind of see the little different scenes from James Bond. So in 74 again, I was 10 years old. That's probably a pinnacle year for me. Going to see James Bond in theater, just loved it. That's the record. Look, the record's still in pretty good shape. Still in the sleeve. Look at that.
What did you love about James Bond?
See, that's in pretty good shape. This the action, the special effects. In Live and Let Die, one of the special effects is the motorboat jump. And I think it holds a Guinness Book of World Records for the longest motorboat jump. These models here, Conan, kind of cool. Mobius went out of business, so you can't even get those anymore. I might build them one day, but I kind of enjoy just looking at the boxes and the artwork of Conan. Probably noticed on the shelves, these are called Big Little books. Started about in the late 1920s, 1930s. Most of these are 34. To show you, let me just, here's a Buck Rogers. Buck Rogers in the City Below the Sea. Kind of cool thing about it is, There's an illustration on every page, and then you can kind of read the story. So it's kind of for kids. You can get these for like $10 to $25. The Buck Rogers and the Flash Gordon ones like this probably go for the most. If you ever see one that's the Adventures of Dick Tracy, that's the first big little book, and that's kind of bigger money in that. But I get it because I enjoy reading them, looking at them when I was a kid. This shelf here, of course, more big little books, some omnibus Marvel, Spirit. And on here, man, what was the one thing I would look at? I kind of throw junk on here because I don't know where else to put it. So I was kind of storing this. And look at this. This is like a Mortal Kombat thing they gave away at Best Buy. So there's like Scorpion there. And I think I grabbed about 20 of them when I was there. So I got a lot more. So there's a lot more. I've been selling them for like $5 on eBay. So there's some cool things. A lot of superhero books. Some of the first ones and reference books. Over here, I got a Vampirella model for Mobius. That's kind of worth a lot. Haven't built it yet, but still in the box, which is kind of nice. Cool thing here, a lot of superhero novels, and I'll show you the real origin of those. Back here, if you look behind these little books, I have first edition Tarzan, Princess of Mars, The Mucker, Edgar Rice Burroughs. That's what I kind of grew up on. But one cool thing I'll show you, these books right here. When I was in fourth grade, I would read the Monster Times, which I'll show you. I read Eerie, Creepy magazine. And in the back, they had advertisement for these horror books. I never could get them when I was that young. But now that I'm older, I get them on eBay. So don't tell my wife. I paid about $20 a piece for these. This is a Frankenstein horror series. Not this all different horror stories. Frankenstein's not the main character in them. But they're just kind of cool from the 1970s, things that they had. Then there's a whole series on Dracula. Kind of very pulpy, but kind of cool too. Dracula's Gold, Dracula Returns. So I'm in the process of ordering those, finding them when I can on eBay, which is kind of cool. This section here is probably one of my most prized. So on the top, Edgar Rice Burroughs. He is a master storyteller. I don't know if you've ever read an Edgar Rice Burroughs. He's got 24 Tarzan novels. Unlike any, probably the last Tarzan movie is the closest cinematically to what how he's portrayed in the books. These here are my Doc Savage books. Doc Savage, The Man of Bronze. They got about 170 titles, I believe, something like that. So the funny thing is, to get this collection, I only had one or two when I was a kid. I was a full adult when I started collecting them. So I would go on business trips, and whenever I went across the country, I would stop in the used bookstores, and I would look. And a lot of times, my coworkers are going with me, going, "Oh, Chris, you're dragging us to another bookstore." And I go to the bookstore, and I go, "Hey, do you have any Doc Savage books?" And the guy would say, we only get those when people die. When they die, then we get their collections." So anytime we ever found a Doc Savage book, my coworkers would tease me and go, "Looks like somebody died and Chris got their Doc Savage books." But I have almost the whole collection right here. You can see I got the Spider, which is a pulp hero from the 40s, and they kind of took those pulp novels, made them in novels. I'll have the Phantom, which I absolutely love. You can see the blue superhero there in the 70s. They did about 16 novels. Avon did those. Very cool. Vampirella, which is very hard to find. Vampirella horror books. I think there's only like 6 in the set there. Flash Gordon. And then I got my Conan, all the Conans. And then if you come down here, they published after Indiana Jones books. And these are really hard to find now, but Indiana Jones and different authors, different things. And I think we got about 13 of those in total. Then let's see. Then we go into Marvel books. Believe it or not, Marvel had a few novels. These are prose novels that they did in the 70s. But on these bottom shelves, these are all Marvel or DC novels, which are hard to get. So that's kind of my superhero Edgar Rice Burroughs shelf. This next shelf over here is my horror shelf. So Ravenloft, which is under like Forgotten Realms horror. I got Arkham horror. Different series, different anthologies. We got Jim Butcher, probably one of my pride and joy books that I tell everyone to read. If you like zombies, Brian Keene The Rising. It's like Night of the Living Dead meets The Exorcist. Crazy, intense, visceral from beginning to end. Definitely unnerve you for a little bit. He's written some other. Ghoul is pretty good of his series, but I can go in depth a little bit later, another time. We got more horror ones over here, but before we go over there, you can look up on the top row. I got quite a few models, Marvel and monster models. I messed up my Monster Times. I had the one right here. If you want to. So this is the Monster Times. I got quite a few. These in 74, 75 came out. 50 cents cover price. But you can look, man, a 10-year-old boy getting this and going through it, it was just like the coolest thing in the world. Planet of the Apes was absolutely huge back then. Everybody watched it on TV if they didn't see it in the theater. So imagine just going through, looking at these pictures, reading the articles. Then we got Conan the Barbarian, artwork, and a little story about him. They would review horror movies that were coming out. There's Fritz the Cat. We won't talk about that one since that's a very adult type film. Different comic books. They had interviews with comic book artists. Look at that. An interview with Count Dracula. Where are you going to read about that? Whoop. Very delicate, the paper. I think that's the poster. Every issue had a poster in the middle of it. You can see there. Charlton Heston and Planet of the Apes. So when I was 10, 14 years old, I'd be hanging these. My wall was covered in these. Let's see what else we got. That has a little bonus comic book story in the back. And then The Evil of Blood Island. And then here's what I was talking about. Different advertisements for books, novels, science fiction horror books, art books. Like I look at these and I'll go on eBay. Oh, there's like a Flash Gordon watch. And I go, that would be awesome to have. Let's look that up on eBay and see if someone's selling it. And usually somebody is. So that's kind of the Monster Times. It only lasted 2 years, but very cool. All right, we move over here. We're gonna mess anything up? Nope. Let's go over here. This here, Repairman Jack series. The first one's called The Tomb. I probably could find it down somewhere. Might be buried a little deeper. I had The Tomb. I bought it in the bookstore. I had it for 2 years before I even read it. Repairman Jack is a go-to series. They say if you have a plumbing problem, call a plumber. But when it hits the fan, you call Repairman Jack, and he's like a fix-it guy. Fixes different issues and things. Whole series, we can go into that in depth because it is definitely one of the best series ever. After we get out of the horror series, which of course you got Stephen King and everything, we go into our fantasy series. So we start with Warhammer on the top, kind of a gritty if you know Warhammer. We got some of the first books they published. I can show you those real quick. These are some of the first ones that Warhammer published here. They were kind of anthologies. You see the artwork's not as cool as it is now, but Wolf Riders and Red Thirst. Boy, that's Gortak, and boy, that's a crazy series that you just love. Then we go into our Dragonlance. I don't know if you love fantasy. Elfstones of Shannara, Dragonlance were like the bread and butter back then. Absolutely loved it. So, as you can see, we have, I'm going to move this chair out of the way, quite a few Forgotten Realms. Almost the whole series on the Harpers. We got Paul Kidd, Justicar, which is really good. But we can go in and probably spend a whole episode just on these fantasy books, how cool they are. These are kind of cool too. I know Magic is like a big thing. I was into Magic when it started. These are like the world's smallest Magic deck. I don't know if anyone's ever seen that. But the cool thing is, look, they're like actual cards. You could play a whole game with these little teeny Magic cards. Like easy to lose, but kind of cool. Over here, you can see my Superman back glass. A friend called me up one Saturday and said, "Hey, I could use your help. Do you want a job?" And the job was going to an old factory and smashing all these old video games so they could fit them into a dumpster. So I kept quite a few back glasses, gave away a bunch. Got a tabletop asteroid machine I had for years. But this is all art books on comic book art. You can take a look at those. So what we got here? Oh, that's a surprise. Star Wars. Marvel had these big comic books. There's Star Wars 1 and 2. It kind of reprints the one that they had, which I have back in a box somewhere, but that's kind of cool. And the rest of these are just like kind of art books. How to draw, how to write, that either Wizard published or Stanley published or DC published or different ones. So we could probably spend a whole show just going through those different ones and seeing in a bunch of big comic books there. So that's like a whole issue, just going through those. Over here, we kind of get into our science fiction. So we have our Warhammer 40,000, Necromunda, which these are super hard to get. This one and all these, because I bought these before it like became a game or a big thing, and now they're really hard to find. I would say one of my pride and joys. So I know you think he's crazy, and I know the Scientology is nuts, but Battlefield Earth. This is the first edition when Battlefield Earth came out, and man, I read that, and it is probably one of the best science fiction opera I've ever read. So definitely, if you want a good read, I know he's a little crazy, but he's a fantastic author. L. Ron Hubbard, Battlefield Earth. Then we kind of more just regular science fiction we can go through another time. Up here is my Remo Williams Destroyer set, kind of a men's adventure type fiction. Then we got our Star Wars. This book here, Gene Wolfe and Archbishop John J. Myers. So they got together as adults and said, "Hey, let's get a book in like the space opera, like we used to watch in the theaters and stuff." And they wrote Space Vulture. It is a space opera and it's fabulous. I wish they'd make a movie of this. It'd be a great hit. Dark Sun is something that Forgotten Realms did. Kind of a setting on a desert type planet that's dying. And these are pretty hard to find, pretty cool books. Some of them are a lot better than others. As you can see as we go through our different sci-fi. I have other books that aren't quite as regulated. But if you look over here, you're going to see something that's probably going to freak you out a little bit. So I probably would say this to preface. I know Grant has his game channel. Grant, I watch it all the time. I love it. Board Games with Brandy. So I probably could even use both your helps if you ever wanted to make a trip out here and help me organize some of these games. As you look, they're kind of double stacked on these shelves I got from Home Depot. Or as you go up, there's quite a few. And again, this is like a lifetime game since I've had since the 70s and played. So we got all these stacks over here. We got our boarding table. This is the most recent one, the Dwellers of Elderville, that we'll be going through and getting ready to play. We see all the stacks. We got puzzles, games, more games, more puzzles. As you can see, just quite a bit. I keep getting another shelf thinking one more shelf will do it. And of course, what am I, like 10 shelves in? So pretty cool. That's probably it for this episode. We're going to do an episode every week. We'll go in depth a little bit more in things. So please stay tuned. You can even write in saying, "Hey, I'd like to see more of that," or if you saw a picture of something you'd like to hear more about. We'll go into a little more in depth in things. That was just kind of overall view of everything. So thanks for visiting the Secret Cavern, and remember, don't touch my stuff.